And now on your PBS station, the Dead Theologians Book Club.
Is this on? Everything is ready? Very good. Greetings. My name is Irenaeus, or Irenaeus of Lyon, or some have called me Saint Irenaeus. For those of you who don't know, I was a leader in the Christian church during the 2nd century, the author of several very important theological books. My teacher was Polycarp, who in turn was a disciple of the Apostle John. But enough about me. I have the task of doing this month's book review for the Dead Theologians Book Club, or as some of us like to call it, Reviews from Beyond the Grave. Well, we thought it was funny. Anyway, you see, a number of us started this centuries ago, and we've had new members coming on a regular basis ever since. We get together to read current books of theology and then discuss them amongst ourselves. It's a great way to do continuing education. And then we choose one of our number to give a book review right here on PBS, your Paradise Broadcasting Service. Now, let me get my notes, because I'm it this month, and I think I know why. We've been reading a book called A More Christlike God, A More Beautiful Gospel. The author is Brad Jersak, or we might call him by the ministry name, which he has recently taken on, Irenaeus, which I think is a much nicer name than Brad. Brad is sort of prosaic, don't you think? And then Jersak, or Jersak, no one knows quite how to pronounce it. Anyway, I'm fairly certain I was chosen to do this review because of that name change. At first, I thought it was because he mentioned me or quoted me more than any other author. Sometimes we choose who's to do the review that way. But no, well, he did quote me 3 times in context, for which I'm happy, but only 3 times. But Simone Weil, 7 times? And I lost count of how many times Augustine was mentioned, or Martin Luther, or even John Calvin. I didn't say the mentions had to be positive. By the way, if Mr. Calvin were to ever decide to come to one of our meetings, he might be allowed to give a rebuttal. But he and Jonathan Edwards and a few others have their own little meetings. Anyway, it's probably for the best. I don't think Mr. Calvin would have liked this book. But I did. So here are my thoughts. Brad, or Irenaeus, sets out to answer some huge questions, such as, what is God like? Now, I really thought we had answered that question a long time ago. What's it been? 18 centuries since I did my own writing. Now, I'll be the first to admit that I did not get everything right. But I made a good start. And it seems like after 18 centuries, the question should be answered. But sadly, the Christian church seems to take several steps back on a regular basis, and then someone has to come along like Mr. Jersak and write another book saying what God really is like. Anyway, there is much I could say about this book, but I'll boil it down to the one part that struck me the most. Mr. Jersak uses two words to form one of the best explanations for theodicy that I've ever heard. By the way, I was one of the first, if not the very first, Christian theologian to talk about theodicy. In fact, I have one named after me, the Irenaean theodicy. Well, theodicy, of course, is the tension between God being an all-powerful God and an all-loving God, and then looking at the world as it is, seeing the suffering, the pain, the evil which exists, and asking the question, if God is loving and if he's all-powerful, why does he allow these things to happen? That is theodicy. Well, I wrote about the necessity of an epistemic separation or a distance between God and man, so that man would be able to choose to love God. Well, in this book, Mr. Jersak uses two words, consent and participation. The book explains how God consented before the creation of the world to allow his creation to choose his love out of their own free will. But he didn't stop there. The incarnation showed God's willingness to participate in a world that was necessarily flawed because of that original consent. That's how Mr. Jersak explains it. Nice work. Perhaps one day, like me, he'll have a theodicy named after him. Oh, wait. Perhaps he already does. The Irenaean theodicy. I also liked the book's discussion of the atonement. It makes clear that what Jesus did on the cross was not to satisfy the wrath of an angry God, but rather to show the love of that God. I used to teach that the death of Christ on one tree reversed the effect of Adam's actions on an earlier tree. I saw it as a recapitulation, or even a rescue of sorts. The most important thing is to see what happened at the cross in such a way that it gives a view of God who is above and beyond anything else, ultimate love. So when you put all of these things together, you see that God is not powerful like this, but he's powerful like this, which is far greater. Well, that's all the time I have. Be sure to tune in again next month for the next presentation of the Dead Theologians Book Club. May God bless you, and may God bless and use books like Brad Jersak's A More Christlike God, A More Beautiful Gospel. Thank you.